The topic of our webinar today is the report of exempt distribution, how to complete it, when to file, what to avoid, and what's new. My name is Jeff Scanlon. I'm a lawyer in the corporate finance branch of the OSC, and I am the coordinator for the SME Institute this season. I'm delighted to introduce our speakers for today's session. Evan Marquis is an exempt market review officer at the OSC. Yan Q. Chan is a legal counsel at the OSC. And Kian Slags is a business analyst at the OSC. We'll send evaluation forms at the end of the session, and we'd very much appreciate your feedback on today's session. We'll also be sending CPD certificates via email after the session. Before we begin, I'd like to remind participants that the views expressed in this presentation are the personal views of the presenting staff and do not necessarily represent the views of the Commission or other Commission staff. The presentation is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal or accounting advice. Information has been summarized and paraphrased for presentation purposes, and the examples have been provided for illustration purposes only. Responsibility for making sufficient and appropriate disclosure and complying with applicable securities laws remains with the company. Information in this presentation reflects the personal views of presenting staff in respect of securities laws and other relevant standards that are in effect as of the date hereof. And finally, the contents of this presentation should not be modified without the express written permission of the presenters. The objective of the OSC SME Institute is to support small and medium-sized businesses in facilitating cost-effective compliance through issuer outreach and education. It's important for issuers to know securities regulatory requirements and to help them navigate regulatory waters. The idea is that if we can help issuers to better understand the disclosure, filing, and other requirements, they can focus their resources on building their company. Ultimately, we both have the same goal, for issuers to provide appropriate and meaningful information to investors and stay onside regulatory requirements. It's important to remember that at the end of the day, investor confidence in information that companies provide is critical to the success of the company. At this point, I'd like to pass it over to Evan to walk you through today's agenda and start the core substantive part of the session.
Hello everyone, my name is Evan Marquis and I'm the review officer for the exempt market within the corporate finance branch. Today, we'll be walking you through some key topics including timing requirements, fees, how to file, recent form changes, saving drafts and submitting amendments, the offering memorandum exemption, general PDF submissions, and common form errors. If you participated in this webinar last year, you can treat most of this presentation as a refresher. However, we have added two new sections. The first concerns Form 72503F for distributions outside Canada. The second concerns key changes to Form 45106F1, which went into effect on October 5th, 2018. Generally, exempt market securities issued in Canada are exempt from the prospectus requirements and are subject to less disclosure, have lower costs to raise capital, and can do so in shorter periods of time. These securities fall under National Instrument 45106. This market is accessed by both domestic and international issuers, which encompasses public and private companies. There is a combination of large institutional investment interest and qualified individual investors in this marketplace. Investors who buy securities through prospectus exemptions generally do not have the benefit of ongoing information about the security that they are buying or the company selling it. As well, they often do not have the ability to easily resell the security. Companies and underwriters must report certain exempt distributions to the OSC by completing and filing the Form 45106F1 Report of Exempt Distribution. The Exempt Market Review Desk is often asked about timelines for filing reports of exempt distribution. Pursuant to NI 45106 Part 6, the form must be filed no later than 10 days after the distribution date. Investment fund issuers may have different timing requirements that we won't be discussing today. The focus here is on non-investment fund issuers filing in Ontario. For multiple dates on one report, note that distributions must occur within a 10-day period. If the dates do not fall within 10 days, multiple reports will be required. If the 10th day is a weekend or public holiday in Ontario, the filing would be due on the next business day in Ontario. Occasionally, public holidays in Ontario are different than other provinces. Please note that the due dates and times of submissions are calculated in Ontario time or Eastern Standard Time. The illustration on this slide indicates a sample distribution period with a distribution date or start date of October 2nd and an end date of October 12th. October 12th is 10 days after the specified start date, and filers cannot exceed this parameter. If a report was filed on October 13th in this example, the submission would be 1 business day late and would be subject to late fees, which will be discussed in subsequent slides in more detail. The illustration on this slide indicates a start date or first distribution date of October 4th. 10 days from this date would be October 14th. However, because the 10th day falls on a weekend, the filing would then be due on the next business day in Ontario, which is October 16th. In this same example, suppose a second distribution date of October 12th existed. In this case, it can be included in the same report as it is within an acceptable 10-day range. The due date is counted from the first distribution date or start date indicated on the form. If a third distribution date of October 17th existed, it would need to be captured in a separate report of exempt distribution. The OSC fee rule provides information regarding late fees applicable to the late filing of certain documents in Appendix D, columns A and B, specifically for the Form 45-106F1 at Item C. Fees are $100 for every business day following the date the form was required to be filed by a person or company until the date the form is filed, to a maximum of $5,000 for all forms required to be filed by the person or company in the calendar year. We prefer that our filers wait for their fee letter before sending payment for any late fees owing. Before you proceed to file your form, we encourage you to read through the important information on the Exempt Market webpage. A link to the page is on the next slide. Simply click on each tile to learn more. The fillable e-form can be accessed from the OSC main page via the Quick Links section under the OSC's electronic filing portal. It can also be accessed from the Exempt Market page. Select non-investment fund or investment fund as applicable. Again, the focus of this presentation is on non-investment fund filers. A calendar wizard will pop up upon clicking into the date field. It will not allow a distribution period that exceeds 10 days after the start date. The distribution period entered at Item 7F of the form should align with the dates entered upon launching the form. Again, the calendar wizard in the form will not allow you to select a range beyond 10 days after the start date. A red box will indicate that you need to adjust the field in order to conform with the requirements. Additionally, the form will not allow you to enter an end date that occurs into the future. If there is only one distribution date, the start date and end date can be the same. Entering pre-June 2016 distribution dates will prompt the user to contact the OSC's contact center in order to obtain a link to the previous version of the e-form. Effective March 31st, 2018, Rule 72-503's purpose is to provide Ontario market participants with greater certainty in cross-border transactions. It provides new exemptions from the prospectus requirement for certain distributions of securities outside Canada that comply with the laws of the foreign jurisdiction. The OSC's electronic filing portal will now prompt issuers with a note regarding OSC Rule 72-503 distributions outside of Canada. If an issuer is not relying on NI 45-106 exemptions for offshore distributions and is relying on OSC Rule 72-503 instead, a 72-503F must be filed. This is a simple, fillable PDF form without corresponding scheduled data. Distributions captured in the 72-503F need not be duplicated in the Form 45-106F1. The form should be uploaded and filed as a general PDF submission under OSC Rule 72-503F filing type within 10 days of the distribution. At present, there is no filing fee required for the 72503F. Once you have entered a valid distribution period, a link to the online form will appear. Click this to launch and begin entering your form data. Before doing so, however, it is recommended that you consult the instructions link above the link to the form. Here, a detailed set of instructions and useful tips provide guidance on a number of key topics, many of which are covered in this presentation. We won't be doing a detailed walkthrough of the form in this presentation. However, we will highlight key segments, including recent amendments to the e-form effective October 5th, 2018. If you are filing a new report, select New Report. If an error was made when you initially filed the form, you must file an amended form by selecting Amended Report in Item 1 of the e-form. You must reference the original submission ID or EDR number in the box provided to the right. Note that if you are filing a second amendment, the first amendment will then be entered in this box as a submission being amended. Please do not select New Report when filing an amended submission. Generally, there are no activity fees required for an amendment, but if you change the distribution dates, additional fees may apply. There is also a comment field that allows you to explain what is being amended vis-a-vis your previous submission. In the event that the amendment was not requested by corporate finance staff, these comments are particularly helpful in terms of identifying why the amendment is being submitted. And now, I'd like to pass things over to my colleague Yan, who will discuss some recent form changes.
Hello, my name is Yan Chan, and I will be discussing the new form changes effective October 5th, 2018. We recognize that there are circumstances where two or more issuers distribute a single security, distributions involving co-issuers and joint distributions. We have amended National Instrument 45106 to provide that an issuer or underwriter is not required to file a report for distribution of securities if a report has been filed by another issuer or underwriter for the distribution of the same security. We've also amended Item 3 of the report to require that in these instances, the filer identifies the co-issuers of the security. We ask that filers record the issuer's full legal name at Item 3, including complete suffixes such as incorporated, limited, or corporation as applicable. All filers must indicate whether the filing involves a co-issuer. So if two or more issuers distributed a single security, provide the full legal names of the co-issuers other than the issuer that was named above. In most cases, though, simply select No and proceed to the next item. The issuer's North American Industry Classification Standard, or NAICS code, should be recorded at Item 5A. We ask that you record a number which, in your reasonable judgment, most closely corresponds to the issuer's primary business activity. Please also note we've added crypto assets as a new primary business option box. Given the increase in the number of offerings in the exempt market by issuers that invest in crypto assets, we've added this box to require filers to identify an issuer whose primary business is to invest all or substantially all of its assets in crypto assets. If the issuer's SEDAR profile is a private profile, we'd appreciate if you could provide a screenshot of the issuer's profile by email to exemptmarketfilings@osc.gov.on.ca. We amended the requirement for non-investment fund issuers to identify the name of the exchange on which the issuer's securities primarily trade, to provide that this requirement also only applies to equity securities. Filers are not required to provide any exchange information pertaining to an issuer's debt securities. So please select one box as applicable. We have amended Item 5H to direct filers to select the size of the issuer's assets based on its most recently available annual financial statements. When considering the size of the issuer's assets, please consider the most recently available annual financial statements in Canadian dollars, or the size as at the distribution end date in the case of an issuer which has not completed a full financial year. We made corresponding changes to item 6 to the form for investment fund issuers. Given the increase in the number of offerings in the exempt market by issuers that invest in crypto assets, we have amended item 6B of the report to require filers to identify where the type of investment fund that most accurately identifies an investment fund issuer is a crypto asset investment fund. We've amended item 6E of the report so that filers are only required to provide the name of the exchange on which the investment fund's securities primarily trade. We've clarified item 7F of the report that the number of purchasers in the third column refers to unique purchasers. So when calculating the number of unique purchasers per row, filers should count each purchaser only once. Joint purchasers may be counted as one purchaser. The report previously contained an exemption from the information requirement of item 9 for 5 categories of issuers and requires filers to consider and indicate whether each of the exemption categories is applicable to the issuer. We amended this item so that filers are only required to indicate one of the applicable exemption categories. Select only one box. If multiple boxes apply, select the most applicable option. Importantly, we have amended the certification. We've amended it so that it clarifies that the individual certifying the report is doing so on behalf of the issuer or underwriter, to require the individual to certify that the information provided in the report is true and to the extent required complete, include a knowledge qualifier, permit authorized agents to sign the certification, and remove the bold all-cap statement that it is an offense to make a misrepresentation, and replace it with a reminder of the obligation to file the report. A number of new security codes have also been added for the purposes of disclosing security types throughout the e-form. Schedule 1 of the report requires filers to provide the paragraph number in the definition of accredited investor in Section 1.1 of National Instrument 45106 that applies to the purchaser. We've amended Schedule 1 to allow issuers distributing securities to non-individual permitted clients to indicate this by selecting NIPC in the drop-down from the Excel template without having to specify the applicable paragraph number in the definition of accredited investor. So this concludes our discussion on form changes, and now back to Evan to discuss saving your drafts.
In October 2017, the OSC enhanced the Save Draft functionality for the Form 45106F1. Click on the Save Draft button located at the upper right corner of the e-form to save a copy at any time. Enter the name of the issuer or underwriter for whom the submission is being filed for in the appropriate field. When you first save the e-form, a link to the Save Draft will be emailed to you. This link will remain active for 30 days. However, once you have actually filed, the link will only be available for 14 days from the date of submission. Importantly, this new feature will prevent filers from having to re-enter form data again and reduces the potential for new errors on amendment in the event that one is requested. However, note that only one amendment can be made within the 14 days with the original link. You must save your draft each time that you make changes. You can print or save a copy of the e-form or email the link to others for review. In order to receive an email link to your draft e-form, simply enter the issuer or underwriter name as well as your email address and click Send me the link. Once you save your draft, you will receive an email which looks like the example in this slide. We recommend that you flag or file this email for ease of reference in the event that you need to amend your form or schedule data within the 14-day period following the submission date. Corporate finance staff will not be able to send you a hyperlink to your draft form. Generally, each original report of exempt distribution requires payment of a $500 activity fee. This is set out in Appendix C of OSC Fee Rule. If you are unable to pay by credit card when the report is submitted, you must pay by check or wire transfer. When sending payment by check, we ask that you include a copy of the fee letter, EDR number, and the correct issuer or underwriter name of the entity certifying the report. If you must pay by wire transfer, the fees administrator can send you detailed instructions. Note that your wire transfers are subject to an additional bank fee. The offering memorandum, or OM exemption, was designed to facilitate capital raising by allowing issuers to solicit investments from a wider range of investors than they would be able to under other prospectus exemptions, providing certain conditions are met. Issuers are required to file a current OM with the OSC on or before the 10th day after the first distribution when using the OM exemption for an Ontario distribution. Marketing materials used in the context of an offering made in reliance on the OM exemption must also be filed with the OSC. However, there is no need to file this documentation again after subsequent closings unless there is a change to these materials. Both offering memoranda and marketing materials can be attached or referenced with the report of exempt distribution at item 7H of the form. Additionally, these materials can be filed via the OSC's electronic filing portal under the appropriate document types. These document types are mentioned in subsequent slides. If you choose to reference your documentation at item 7H, select a document type from the dropdown, enter a date, indicate whether it was previously filed, then enter an EDR number in the case of a prior report of exempt distribution, or a GEN number in the case of a prior general PDF submission. Issuers utilizing the OM exemption should take note that any amount raised under the OM exemption in Ontario that exceeds $2 million will be subject to an additional activity fee. This is set out in the fee rule at Appendix C. The example here for ABC Capital Inc. indicates that $2.6 million was raised under the OM exemption in Ontario. Consequently, 0.025 of that amount is equal to $650, and this represents the total activity fee owing. If the company paid their standard $500 activity fee upon filing, an additional amount of $150 would be owed. The fees administrator will issue a fee letter for the appropriate amount. Companies that use the OM exemption in Ontario have ongoing disclosure requirements and must deliver financial statements annually to the OSC. Generally, an issuer must deliver annual financial statements 120 calendar days after their financial year end to the OSC. If an issuer has changed their financial year end, they must also file a notice of change in financial year end. Issuers should review Section 2.9 of NI 45-106 for complete information about the deadlines pertaining to the filing of annual financial statements. Additionally, a Notice of Use of Proceeds, Form 45-106 F16, is required. This can be found in the Exempt Market webpage under the Forms and Filing Requirements heading. OM exemption users must file their annual financials on time. Late annual financial statements are subject to late document fees. The OSC fee rule provides information regarding late fees applicable to the late filing of certain documents in Appendix D, columns A and B, specifically for annual financials at item A. Fees are $100 for every business day following the date the form was required to be filed by a person or company until the date the form is filed, to a maximum of $5,000 for all forms required to be filed by the person or company in the calendar year. Note this annual cap is independent of the cap for issuers and underwriters and their late 45-106F1 submissions. General document submissions can be made through the General PDF Submissions section of the OSC's electronic filing portal. Under the PDF Submissions section heading, click the Here hyperlink in order to access the fillable form template. Exempt market filers may file various types of documents as general submissions. This slide captures some of the more common document types. please ensure that your filings are made under the correct document type. I'm now going to discuss some of the common form compliance errors and hopefully provide some clarity regarding how to enter key data fields correctly. Perhaps the most common and confusing error is regarding the total number of unique Ontario purchasers. Item 7F of the form requires the number of purchasers vis-a-vis the jurisdiction and exemption entered and, on an overall basis, the total number of unique purchasers. The best practice here is to count each purchaser only once in each row on the form as opposed to simply counting the number of transactions or purchases listed on Schedule 1, which may include multiple items for the same individuals. Note that the form fields ask for purchasers and not purchases or transactions. For example, John Smith, an Ontarian, makes 3 separate purchases under the accredited investor exemption within the same report of exempt distribution and appears 3 times on Schedule 1. If no other purchasers were on the report, the number of purchasers field at item 7F for Ontario and the accredited investor exemption would indicate 1, and the total number of unique purchasers would likewise be 1. Joint purchasers may be treated as one purchaser for the purposes of item 7F of the form. Another common form deficiency is regarding the aggregate Ontario distribution or purchase amount. Ultimately, the amounts reported on Schedule 1 should align with information reported at item 7F on the form. Common mistakes here are often a result of omitting or adding extra Ontario purchasers in Schedule 1, counting a purchaser total from a jurisdiction other than Ontario on the form, or omitting the purchase amounts in either the form or Schedule 1. Entering inconsistent distribution dates is a common error made by filers. As mentioned in previous slides, issuers are able to enter a 10-day distribution period as a maximum. In many cases, the first distribution or start date and end date will be the same. In either case, though, the information entered at item 7B on the form must be consistent with the Schedule 1 distribution dates for Ontario purchasers recorded in column M. In other words, the dates reported on Schedule 1 shall not precede the start date nor exceed the end date provided at item 7B. There are fee implications here as each 10-day distribution period requires a separate report and activity fee. Occasionally, filers will omit an exemption on either the form at item 7F or on the Schedule 1, and, consequently, the information won't match. Simply put, the total number of unique Ontario purchasers relying on a particular exemption must correspond with those same exemptions on the form. In certain circumstances, other may be selected on Schedule 1. For example, Section 2.24 of NI 45-106 doesn't exist under the column Q dropdown and would be a valid option under Other if properly specified in column R. Similarly, Others should then be selected on the form with a note referencing the particular exemption relied on. Corresponding exemption subsections are also required in the case of Section 2.3 or 2.5 as indicated in the color-coded figure on this slide. If applicable, it is also required for Section 2.9 for eligible investors. All of the purchaser information should be entered in each row if applicable. If an address field, province code, subsection, or security code was omitted, you will need to amend your submission to provide missing information. Be sure to enter individuals using the family name and given name fields as opposed to the non-individual name field. If there are joint purchasers, simply use an ampersand to denote this relationship within the same row to separate the names. For example, Jones and Smith and Jane and Robert. Do not commingle account-level details or other unnecessary information within the personal or non-individual name fields. Best practice here is to enter only the legal name of the beneficial owner. In some cases, the beneficial owner name is not required. Guidance on entering beneficial owner information, trust corporations, and managed accounts can be found in CSA Staff Notice 45308 at item 20. A link is provided at the end of this presentation. Now, my colleague Kian will discuss certain errors regarding NRD numbers and compensated persons.
Thanks, Evan. My name is Kian Slicks, and I'm a business analyst in the Compliance and Registrant Regulation branch. Over the next few minutes, I'll be going over some common issues that we find regarding compensated parties and reports of exempt distribution. In particular, I'm going to be talking about Item 4 and Item 8, as well as the compensated person field in the Schedule 1. We'll begin with Item 4, which contains underwriter information. If an underwriter is completing and certifying a report of exempt distribution, the name and, if applicable, the NRD number must be entered here. Similarly, if direct compensation is provided in connection with the distribution, Item 8 must be completed. If the compensated person has an NRD number, it should be provided. In order to avoid having to amend your original submission, please ensure that the correct NRD number corresponds to the proper registrant name. You should also ensure that the registrant name is spelled correctly and in its complete form. Abbreviations and short forms should be avoided. Common errors are often a result of extra or inverted digits in the NRD number fields. Note that adding extra zeros or entering an incorrect NRD number may link a different existing or future registrant to the filing. A negative response to the registrant indicator in Item 8 is acceptable if the person is exempt from registration or is otherwise not a registrant according to the most current NRD records. Firms relying on the International Dealer Exemption or the International Advisor Exemption, as set out in Section 8.18 and Section 8.26 respectively of National Instrument 31103, are not registrants and should select No at Item 8A. However, they have been assigned a firm NRD number and should enter it in Item 8. In addition to Item 8 of the form, compensated person information must also be correctly completed in the Schedule 1. The name of the field reads full legal name or person compensated for distribution to this purchaser, and it is the last column in the Schedule 1. The Instructions tab of the Schedule 1 template provides further information on how to fill out this field correctly. Filers should fill out the field as follows. Filers should provide the full legal name of the person compensated. However, if the person compensated is a registered firm, provide the firm NRD number only. When providing the full legal name of an individual, indicate the family name first, followed by the first given name and secondary given names. One of the most common issues that we see is that filers are including the names of registered firms in the compensated person field of the schedule, either instead of or in addition to the firm's NRD number. To reiterate, please only include the NRD number in this field for registered firms. In addition to these instructions in the template, we request that when indicating multiple compensated persons in the same field, the names and/or NRD numbers should be separated by a semicolon. Of course, the names and NRD numbers indicated on the Schedule 1 must be consistent with those provided in Item 8 of the report. We also notice some issues when filers are including the names of individuals or non-registered firms. The most common one is the use of names that are unclear or slightly different than those on the form. When indicating the name of an individual or non-registered firm, please use the complete name, as indicated in Item 8, not short forms or initials. As seen in the examples on the slide, for Example Firm Inc., putting just Example or EFI on the Schedule 1 would be incorrect. Finally, if there is no compensated person, leave the field blank. There is no need to include NA or any other such indicator. Now I'll hand things back to Evan to continue discussing common form compliance errors.
Another common error or omission is regarding the issuer name. As indicated at Item 3 on the form, we expect the full legal name to be entered accurately. This name should be identical to the name entered at the top of Schedule 1 and, if applicable, Schedule 2. It is also important to include the certification date on Schedule 1. On occasion, we receive invalid or outdated versions of schedules attached to current reports of exempt distribution. Filers must use the current Canadian Securities Administrators approved version of Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Hyperlinks to each of Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 can be found directly below the link to file a Form 45-106-F1 on the Exempt Market webpage. The content of these templates and columns should not be altered or manipulated in any way, including the sheets or tabs at the bottom. If you utilize an invalid template or manipulate the content of the schedule, you will be asked to file an amended submission with the correct template. We recognize that issuers and service providers will experience technical issues from time to time. We want you to know that we are here to help troubleshoot and resolve these issues in order to facilitate successful electronic transmissions of submissions in a timely manner. You can reach out to our contact center as a first point of contact, either by telephone or email. If necessary, electronic submissions of the form and schedules can be made to the Exempt Market and e-filings email addresses, but they will need to be filed through the portal once the technical issues are resolved. I'll now pass things back to Jeff.
Thanks, Evan. I'd like to thank Evan, Yan, and Kian for sharing their expertise with us today. Before we proceed to the Q&A, I'd like to draw your attention to the appendix in the slide deck, which contains useful references relating to today's topics, as well as general contact information for today's presenters. Please note that while staff are happy to answer any questions you may have, this does not replace the advice of independent third-party advisors, as we are, of course, not the attendees' advisors. Also, as I mentioned at the outset, we'll send evaluation forms at the end of the session, and we'd very much appreciate your feedback. And we'll also be sending CPD certificates via email after the session. So again, thank you very much for joining us today, and please stay online for the Q&A, which will begin shortly.